Every once in a while, Greek requires us to, in a sense, fill in the blanks. In other words, it's assuming certain pieces of information, and the translator has to decide whether they're going to add in that information or leave it out. Romans 6:5 is a great example. In Romans chapter 6, Paul has been talking about the role of ongoing sin in the believer's life and that we shouldn't be okay with it. And he gets to verse 6 and he says, "For if we have become united with," I'll come back to that, "in the likeness of his death, but also we will be of the resurrection," or of his resurrection. Now, there's two things that I want to point out. The first one's real simple. This word sumphutoi is a compound made with sun. The nu changes to a mu because of the labial phi. So it is to become united with. Well, with whom or with what? This is a real common problem with compounds with sun, is that they leave the second half, so to speak, up to context. So this is pretty obvious that it's with Christ. So again, that's a blank you have to fill in, but it's not a hard one to fill in. But the problem is, or the challenge I should say, is what you have to fill in down here. Let me show you this sentence laid out in phrasing. What you can see here is that we have this parallel sentence with elements left out of the second half. And that's a very common thing in Greek, that they would say, well, I've already said these words up here, and because this is a parallel construction, I don't have to repeat everything. So, for if we have become united with, understood him, in the likeness of his death, so also. And this esamatha in Greek order actually comes after anastasios, but I moved it to the beginning to show you the parallelism. So we have become, we will be, his death, his resurrection. What's omitted in the second half is united with, see there's nothing here, and in the likeness. So what's being assumed is that for if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, so also we will be united with him in the likeness of his resurrection. So we get back to the text, and it's just fascinating to watch how the translators handle this. In my translation, I said, united with him, and everyone does that. And I had to repeat, united with him in the likeness. You notice that there's nothing coming up on the Greek text. That's because these are the assumed words from the parallel, the previous parallel. Let's check and see what the other translations do. Here's the NIV. For if we've been united with him in a death like his, we will certainly also be united with him in a resurrection like his. So we have united with him, and we have like his is repeating assumed words from the first half. You switch over to the ESV, and you're going to see, for if we have been united with him in a death like his, we will certainly be united with him in a resurrection like his. In other words, the ESV is, like I did in my translation, bringing in the words that are assumed from the first half. Same thing is going on in the NRSV. Let me just stop right here to beat my drum. It's that when people think that translations are transparent to the original, the problem is they aren't always. And if you don't know a little Greek, you don't know when they have Greek behind the English or when they're assuming something from the context. And both the ESV and the NRSV, which say they're essentially literal, here are simply adding in words. Be united with him and like his. There's nothing wrong in doing it, but this is the problem of saying, Oh, I like my translation that's transparent to the original. Well, if you don't know the original, you don't know when they are being transparent. But let's look at some of the other translations. Because the NASB uses italics, they're able to handle the situation a little easier. For if we have become united with him, that's italicized, in the likeness of his death, certainly we shall also be, and you notice they do not repeat the assumed united with him, and they italicize in the likeness of his resurrection. So that's a little closer to the Greek. The problem, of course, is that it's not really English, and I think it's misleading. So when you say, certainly we shall also be in the likeness, see, we will be in the likeness. No, that's not what the text means. The parallel structure says that we shall also be understood united with him. And so they're connecting a verb with the wrong phrase. It's we will be united with him in the likeness of his resurrection. And what they've done is simply what the King James has done. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. I mean, you can understand it, but the problem is it connects the wrong ideas. Switch over to the Net Bible, and instead of italics, they're able to use footnotes a lot. For if we have become united with him in the likeness of his death, we will certainly also be united in the likeness, again, there's no Greek there, but of his resurrection. But then have the footnote, Greek, we will certainly also of his resurrection. So that's how they handle it. But what struck me as a little strange was the roughness of the CSB translation. Normally it's smoother than this. They say, for if we have been united with him in the likeness of his death, okay, we will certainly also be in the likeness of his resurrection. We will certainly also be in the likeness of his resurrection. They're making the same mistake that the NASB and the King James does, is that they are connecting the verb with the wrong phrase. They will be united with him. What is that union like? Well, it's in the likeness of his resurrection. And thankfully, they have a footnote, be joined with him. So this is just a really good example of how sometimes you simply have to fill in the blanks. And this is why you're learning Greek. So you know where the blanks are and what words are having to be added to make decent and understandable English.